about you, but I've never met anyone who planned on wrecking their life. Do you know anybody that pre-planned, I'm just gonna destroy my life? Yeah, I mean, it is laughable. It is laughable. I don't know anyone also that ever plans to be overweight, or they plan to end up in a position where they have to file bankruptcy, or they spend time planning how they're going to get hooked on pornography, or how they're going to wreck their marriage and relationships, or destroy their children. I don't know anybody that plans to do that. Do you know anybody that plans to do that? See, the problem is when we pre-plan to do stupid things and make dumb decisions, what ends up happening is we end up trying to hide them. And then what would happen is we lie about them. And then that makes us lie more about them. And we end up losing trust of people and those around us that love us the most. So chances are good that none of you and nobody you know has ever pre-planned and decided that they are going to wreck their own life and make stupid decisions. Here's the problem. We also don't plan not to. Last week we talked about the power of our decision-making as we began this series of pre-decide. And for the most part, we said that the quality of your decisions will determine the quality of your life. In other words, we make decisions, and our decisions can in turn make us. We talked about the problem in that. What was it? We are not great decision makers. So what we have to do is we have to use the power of pre-deciding. That when I am faced with this particular situation, I have already pre-decided that I am going to take this action in that situation. And we talked about 6 pre-decision resolutions that we're going to do. I want you guys to say these with me. I am ready. I am consistent. I am devoted. I am generous. I am faithful. And I am a finisher. If we can commit to this, then what happens is our decisions begin to be based not on what feels good in the moment, but who we want to be for the rest of our life. It becomes a God-honoring process that when our values are clear, then our decisions become easier. They become more God-honoring. So I have an opening question for you today as we look at today's subject matter. Honestly, this is probably a big rhetorical question that we all can answer without even having to raise our hands or open our mouths. We just know this. Have you ever been tempted? Yeah. Have you ever regretted what happened when you were tempted? Why is it, that we screwed up when we were tempted? Well, I could say it's probably a pretty easy explanation. We weren't ready. We weren't ready for it. It hit us when we weren't ready for it. Look at what Paul says to the Corinthians. He says, "Be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong." Be on your guard, he says. Stand firm in the faith. Be ready for what's coming. Prepare yourself for what's coming. Paul might be a pretty good example of this. I mean, think about all of the things that he went through, all of the difficulties that he struggled with. He had to have been ready. The guy was shipwrecked. He was stoned. He was beaten. He was chained. He was thrown in prison. He was bitten by a snake. The dude went through everything, left for dead at times. But he stood firm in the faith. And Jesus himself actually gives us words of encouragement in this too, about being ready. In Matthew 26, he said, "Watch and pray." Notice, why do we watch and pray? So that you will not fall into temptation. We watch and pray so we don't fall into temptation. Why? Because the spirit is willing, but what? This stuff. Gosh dang it, it always gets in the way. The flesh is weak. So why are we preparing? Why is it we need to be on our guard? Why is it we're trying to stand firm in the faith? Why are we watching and praying, getting ready, preparing in advance 2 quick practical reasons why we need to do this. Number 1, the devil's coming for you. He's coming. Man, he don't take a day off. This isn't somebody that just lays down quietly and goes away once you decide to accept Jesus. No, on the contrary, you accept Jesus, you have a relationship with him. That's only going to increase his ability to want to come after you. In John 10 and in Luke 22, it says that he is on a mission, and that mission is to steal, kill, and destroy. He's coming. And Paul encourages us in this as well. And he says this again on the battle to the Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians, his second letter, he says, I wrote to you on behalf of God, through the power of the Spirit, I give you these words, so that Satan will not outsmart us. For we are familiar with his evil schemes. Okay, it makes sense, right? Think about this for a second. I wrote to you, he's doing this through the Spirit of God who's directing him to put these words on pages so that Satan will not outsmart us. We're familiar with his schemes. Well, think about this. Who is more familiar with the devil's schemes? Us or God? There's no one more familiar with this guy than God is. I mean, think about it. The Bible? A tool for being able to overcome the temptations and evil of Satan? Who'd have thunk it? Kind of makes sense. The devil's coming for you. It's going to happen. Got to be ready. And the second thing, we're not as strong as we think we are. We're not as strong as we think we are. Paul not only just encourages, but he also gives warnings to why he's encouraging, why he's saying these things. In 1 Corinthians 10, he says, so, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. Why would Paul say this? Well, believe it or not, studies show that people overestimate their ability to resist temptation. Light bulb of surprise? Not really. They've termed this struggle that we have to resist these things, they've termed this. It's what they call restraint bias. Restraint bias. It's this idea that you think that you're able to actually resist more than you really can. I'm going to give you a very basic example for me. Potato chips. Oh, how I love me a good bag of potato chips. You know, I made fun of my wife because she started buying regular Ruffles. And I'm like, why in the world would anybody buy regular Ruffles when they've got cheddar and sour cream, and they've got sour cream and onion, and we've got all of the cheddar jalapeno and these amazing flavors? Why would you buy regular Ruffles? Do you know what I eat the most of now? Regular Ruffles. I don't get it. There's just something addictively delicious about them. The problem is, I have a hard time resisting this. It's so easy in the evenings. Dinner's done. Kitchen's cleaned up. Kids are in bed. We're going to sit down together. And what do? I go to the pantry and I grab the bag of Ruffles. It's not always a good thing. I struggle to resist that. And I find ways to justify why it's okay to go ahead and sit and eat half the bag that night. What I really need is my wife to be stronger on the fact that she's like, no, you're going to eat the whole bag before I get to have any of it. Hide them from me, honey. So why is it... It was an illustration. Don't actually do it. Why is it that we, you and I, as well as others around us, overestimate our ability? Why is it that we do this? It's really an interesting thought process when you think about it, because resisting temptations and resisting these things that we know we probably shouldn't do as often or do at all, it really requires a ton of energy. It requires a ton of energy. The part of our brain that actually controls our willpower, it can slowly wear out. It can slowly start to become weak and feeble. Some thoughts on this. Let's say that you're dealing with a really annoying coworker, and you are fighting every temptation within you to not release your frustration, yell at the top of your lungs, and tell them where they can go. and you do it. But think about the amount of energy it takes to keep from having that reaction to them at work. So then you go home, and what you do is, I love this, I'm going to go back to this because this is just my thing. You cope with food. And you end up eating a bunch of junk and things that you probably shouldn't eat. And that's how you end up coping with it, because though you resisted the urge to yell at work, you did not resist the stress eating when you got home. Or maybe you've resisted the urge all afternoon on a weekend of yelling and blowing up at your kids. And so once you finally get them to bed and it's finally done, what happens is you are weakened by all of that. Your spouse says one little thing that you weren't expecting, and you blow up on them instead. And it really had nothing to do with them. Our willpower weakens over time. Our self-control weakens over time because it's a limited resource. The more we use it, the less that can be left in the tank. So we know the devil's coming for us. We are not as strong as we think. We cannot do it alone. So what is it that we're going to do about this? I want to give you this morning 3 keys to fighting the temptation. 3 things that we are going to pre-decide to do in order to help us be ready. We're going to move the line, we're going to magnify the cost, and we're going to plan our escape. So the first thing we're doing is we're going to move the line. You know, I need a roll. Anybody got a roll of like blue painter's tape on them? Anybody carry that around? No, I'm serious. I'm looking at it. Honey, you guys? Oh, this is good. Okay. All right. Never underestimate the power of a woman's purse. Okay. So we need to move the line. Oh, gosh, this is a brand new roll. Wow, that's impressive. Okay. So we know where the line exists, right? Okay. So I know it'll be a little bit more difficult to see this, but I'm going to put this down. Okay. So here's our line. We've got a line. Okay. So that's the line. We all know where the line is, right? What do we tend to do? Okay? Let's say over here, we're standing in obedience. This is honoring God, making good decisions. Over here, this is sin, temptation, everything that looks so delightful and fun. So what do we tend to do? What do we tend to do with that line? This, right? How close can I get without actually crossing over into what I know is disobedience and sin? That's what we tend to do. I'm gonna walk that line as close as I can. And what happens is then, well, you know, let me give you an example. A great example of this, like the idea of dating, okay? In a dating relationship, think about that. We like to get close to the line. How many of us have ever been in a dating relationship where we knew we were right there at the line, assuming we hadn't already crossed it? We think, well, how much can we do and not actually cross the line? Like how close can I get to them without actually doing things that I shouldn't be doing? Or if you're a total extremist on the other side, and you could get friend zoned for this, how far away can I stay and they know that I actually still love and care about them? You know, there's extremes on both sides, but can I hold their hand? Or can I hug them? Come on, can I just give them a hug? I'll just do a side hug, side hug. That'll work. Or just one little peck. You know, we won't make out. It'll just be a little peck of kissing. Or how about this? Can I just smell her hair? Gosh, the shampoo she uses is just so good. I just want to smell her hair. You know, the funny thing about this is we don't really do this in other areas of life, do we? We don't do this in other areas when we know that what we're dealing with could be a very dangerous thing. I mean, think about it. If you see a snake, okay, in the yard, are you going to see how close you can get to it without getting bit? Other than the freak shows like Elijah and Steve Irwin. I don't think so, especially if you recognize that that's a poisonous snake. Or how about this? There's a train track, and you're playing around the train track, and a train's coming. I'm going to see how close I can stand to the track and not get hit as it goes by. No, our brains just don't work like that. I mean, we know when there's danger, there's something that goes on in our heads that causes us to step farther away from that line. We don't want to get close to that line. Isn't it funny how there's just certain things in our life that we do this? I love this one. How about you're getting ready to go on a nice, long, wonderful road trip? And the thought in your head is, I've got hundreds and thousands of miles to go, but I'm not filling the gas tank. I'm going to see if I can get there on the little bit of fuel that I've got. You're not going to do that, because then what's going to happen is you're going to be stranded on the middle of the highway. So we have to pre-decide that we are going to put distance between ourselves and the temptations that we know we face in our life. That's what we have to do. And for every individual, those are going to be different things. It's not necessarily always the same thing for everybody. We all have our own vices. We all have our own things that we deal with. Satan knows our buttons, and he pushes them. So what do we need to do? What is it that we need to do to put that distance? Anybody? Yeah. Joe's already got it up there. Oh, I'm trying to do this from the wrong direction. Okay. Yeah. We're going to move the line. So if we know that we've got a struggle point, we're going to move the line. We're going to do this. We're going to go here. Here's the line that I am actually going to follow. I'm going to move the line. So instead of walking right here, instead I know that if I pre-decide that this is my line, I am going to protect myself from ever even getting close and questioning whether or not I'm going over that line. I've pre-decided, in order to avoid those temptations and those vices, I'm moving the line. The first thing we do is we move the line. How do we do this? Well, I don't know. Ladies, if you're getting Amazon packages at your house every single day, and that account is adding up in cost, maybe what you need to do is you need to give the password to a friend and have them create it so that you can't always get on there. Maybe if you're spending 4 to 6 to 8 hours a day scrolling on Instagram or social media or whatever, you need to pre-decide, here's my time limit. Here's my time limit, and when I hit that, I need to be done. Or if you're me and you like to snack a little too much at times in the evenings, maybe you have to decide that when dinner's over, that's the end. I'm done eating for the day when dinner is over. That has to be my final meal and the final food of the day. Or better yet, just don't buy the junk to begin with. We have to create barriers between us and the sin. We have to be willing to move the line. Instead of standing here and seeing how close we can get, we move the line so that we're in a safer place. We've pre-decided to move the line to help protect ourselves. Now, I know that there might be some people that the thoughts in their heads are, well, that seems a little restrictive. I mean, what's the fun in that? Staying that far away, towing the line, that's what makes it so fun. It's what makes it so crazy and exciting. Well, how about we listen to what David said in Psalms? He says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance." He says the boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. The boundary lines that he's put, the boundary lines that he's made with God-honoring decisions, they're in pleasant places. I'm going to argue this is not a restrictive idea. This is a freeing idea. This is bringing more freedom to your life because you are now creating a barrier and a boundary that allows you to be more fulfilled in God and the decisions that you're making. That's why we have to pre-decide to move the line. We also have to pre-decide that we are going to magnify the cost. This is a biggie right here, magnifying the cost. If you're going to give into temptation, if that is going to happen, it means that there's going to be risk in play. You have to train your brain to think about what could go wrong. Basically, do this. We ask ourselves this question: what if the worst case scenario comes through? What happens if the worst case scenario comes true? Ask yourself that. Think about that and how you might answer that. You could think about scenarios where temptation would be in play. And you think, well, maybe someone gets pregnant before they desire to be so. Maybe you lose the trust of a loved one. Maybe your reputation goes kaput because of something. Maybe it could cause you to lose your job or be financially wrecked. It could cost you your marriage. It could compromise your relationship with your kids. You think about what the worst case scenario could be. You magnify the cost of the decision that you're making. I'm going to tell you, there's a verse out there in Numbers that is deeply scary to me as a pastor. And honestly, I think it could be scary to any of us because, guys, this is real. This is God's word. So this is very, very real. You will be sinning against the Lord. Mm-hmm. You'll be sinning against the Lord. That right there enough is to make me go, oh, that just hurts. This is the God who loves me, who forgave me, who gave his son for me, who died for me, who rose again, who offers grace and salvation. But when I screw up and I don't magnify the cost and I cross that line, I'm sinning against him. But here's the worst. There's no doubts. There's no questions. This is going to happen. And you may be sure that your sin will find you out. Sticking the knife in and twisting. You have to ask the worst case scenario, magnifying the cost. Pre-decide not to do now what could hurt you so much worse later. Maybe it's a little something like this. I have to ask myself, if I betray my vows to Abby, what could happen? If I betray my vows to Abby, what could happen? Well, I'm probably going to compromise my integrity, number one. I'm probably going to lose the trust and respect of Abby and my kids, or I could lose them altogether. Honestly, I'm going to lose the trust of the people who I am supposed to be shepherding and leading. I'm probably going to lose my opportunity to stay in ministry. Those mere minutes, seconds to minutes, of whatever it is that I fell to in breaking my vows to Abby could wreck a lifetime of surrendering to Jesus. The devil's going to attack us. And when he does, we got to be ready. We got to move that line. We got to magnify that cost. And then we got to plan our escape. And this one's fun. This one's fun because I love the great example in Scripture of the idea of planning an escape. This is Joseph's decision-making. And I'm not talking about Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, because he was starting to plan his escape when he found out Mary was pregnant before they got married, but God took care of that one. I'm not talking about that Joseph. I'm talking about Mr. Technicolor Dreamcoat here. Mr. My brothers really don't like me, Joseph. In chapter 39 of Genesis, it says, Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. That's how Abby describes me. That was funny. I'm being sarcastic. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. Interesting. It would be easy for Joseph to give in this situation. I mean, he's all alone with her. Nobody's going to find out. He can do this and get away with it as long as she doesn't say anything. Oh, man, this is a good-looking woman. I'm young. I'm single. She made the move on me. I didn't make the move on her. You know, in addition to that, what might we do in this situation if there's justification of crossing that line? Maybe what Joe could have done, he could have blamed God. Anybody ever been there? You gave into something, you did something you knew you shouldn't have, you blamed God for it. Well, hey, Joseph in this situation, God, you did this to me. You put me in this situation. You're the one that had my brothers throw me in the pit and then sell me into slavery. It's not my fault I was put in this situation. You orchestrated to this point, so might as well enjoy it. Problem is that we can use our disappointments to then justify our disobedience. And that is definitely not a proper attitude. Oh, well, my spouse isn't meeting my needs, so, I got to do what I got to do. God let me be in this spot, so you know what? I'm just going to live it up. But Joseph walked over to that case of cash, and he slammed it down and said, no deal. See, your husband trusts me. Why would I sin against him? Better yet, why would I sin against the God that I love and I serve? Go, Joseph. He resisted. Yes. Temptation gone. Doesn't have to worry about it anymore. No. Day after day, she was on him. She hit on him every single day, continuing to do it. This is how the devil works. He's trying to wear us down. He was trying to wear Joseph down because he's coming. We're not as strong as we think. We have to pre-decide to plan our escape. You might sit here and go, wow, Joseph is pretty strong. No, he wasn't strong. He was ready. He knew he was going to need the strength of God to help him get through it. He was smart enough to pre-decide to prepare an escape plan. And it happened because one day Potiphar's wife, she reached out physically and grabbed him by the coat and said, let's go, big boy. In Genesis 39, it says Joseph's reaction was this: but he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. He ran out of the house. See, when it comes to all the other temptations in our life, God says, I've given you my armor, I've given you my tools, and you have me by your side, and me as your foundation. You stand, you fight, you tell that temptation where it can go in my name. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the idea of a sexual, immoral temptation, God says, run. Don't even think about standing in the middle of that. Turn around and run the other direction. And that's what Joseph did. He left his coat because he knew something. He knew something smart. He knew this: it's better to have a good name than a good coat. Better to have a good name than a good coat. You got to let go of what holds you back. We have to let go of what holds us down. We have to let go of what gets us in trouble. We have to take it off and say, nope, you can have it. I'm gone. Because my name before God is more valuable than possessions that I can have or a moment's pleasure that I know is not right and disobedient. Joseph had already pre-decided. She grabs, I'm out. I'm not strong enough to resist it. I know that. So I'm going to run from it. The best part of this is that there's actually good news when we're tempted. Paul tells us this in 1 Corinthians 10. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. Now, don't get this twisted. That doesn't mean God won't give you more than you can handle. If He wouldn't give us more than we could handle, we wouldn't need Him. He's saying you won't be tempted beyond what you can bear because you have the strength of God. Because when you're tempted, what? He, not us, He will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. It's by the strength of God and His decisions that honor Him. It doesn't matter the attack, whether you're struggling with spending in money or eating in food or sexual temptation or lies or gossip. God is faithful no matter what it is that's tempting you to be disobedient to Him and His Word. He says, I have a way out for you if you will rely on me and my strength. So we pre-decide when the devil attacks, we're going to be ready. We're going to pre-decide that we're going to move that line, we're going to magnify the cost, and we're going to plan our escape. Because no one plans to mess up, but few plan not to. Few plan not to mess up. We're going to be ready by being honest about where we're vulnerable. You got to start there. You got to know what your buttons are. You got to know what it is that you struggle with and how is the devil attacking you. Get honest. How is the devil attacking you? Is it an issue of pride? Is it an issue of justifying sin? Compromising your possessions? Easily lying about things? Gossiping around to other people? Do you struggle with being judgmental or overly critical or unforgiving of people that have hurt you? Is it easy for you to just be disobedient because, I don't like that, so I'm not going to follow that part? what is it that the devil attacks you with? We have to pre-decide, I'm putting distance between myself and the temptation that's over there on that other side of the line. You know, when Abby and I got married, I promised her and I promised God that I would be faithful the rest of my life. We all do this in our vows, right? Till death do us part. I'm going to be faithful for the rest of my life. So I had to decide then with her that I would put pre-decided protections in place. And so there are things that we hold fast to. I am not alone somewhere with someone of the opposite sex. Even here at the office, if somebody comes, Nancy's right there. And she knows I've got this person coming. And if the door to my office can remain open, it will remain open. If it's a private session, Nancy and Adam both know I have a very private counseling matter I have to deal with this woman who's coming to me and asking for my assistance. And they know. I am never alone, publicly or privately, with a woman who is not Abby. Or how about this? My computers, my phone, my iPad, all of that stuff, Abby has complete access to all of it. She can get anywhere on any of my devices. She has all of my passwords. She can get into any of my social media accounts and see what's going on. I know some people are thinking, wow, that's really transparent. Pastor Luke, are you really that tempted with things? Think about it this way. Why would I resist a temptation in the future if I have the power to eliminate it today? Why would I worry about resisting it in the future if I can eliminate it today? Because I know the devil's going to attack, and I know I'm not as strong as I think. So I'm going to move the line. We're all going to move the line so we stay farther away from that temptation. We're going to magnify the cost. We're going to do that before we're tempted. We're going to understand the worst case scenario before we're tempted. And then ahead of time, we're going to plan the escape from that temptation. All of this is so directly based on our values. Do we have in place pre-decided, God-honoring values that we apply? Because when our values are clear, the decision is easy to move that line and magnify the cost and plan an escape. Because in the future, again, I've said this before, you're going to be tired. There's going to be times when we're overwhelmed, when we're angry, we get emotional, we get discouraged, and that vulnerable nature is going to be there. So if we're in a place where we're doing this, then decisions won't be based on the emotions in the moment, but on the values that we know God has placed on our hearts. So we must commit all our ways to God and let Him establish our plans. And what do? We decide ahead of time that when I face such and such a scenario, in that situation, I will choose to honor God. I'm going to move the line. I'm going to magnify the cost. I'm going to plan an escape. I'm going to be ready. Let's pray. Father, I pray this morning that your spirit of strength would fall upon us. And that in that spirit of strength, you would break down barriers to open up a place of pure honesty with you in our hearts and our minds that would direct us to those places where we are vulnerable, where we need to move the line, magnify the cost, and be ready with an escape. Father, reveal those things to us and give us the intentionality to put those things in place, to pre-decide, Father, that I am ready. I'm ready for what's coming, and when it comes, I'm going to make a God-honoring decision. My values are in you and your word, and I am obedient to what it says. Father, through that, you will receive glory, you will receive honor, and our light will shine for you at a brighter level. Make us ready. We pray this in the power of your name, Jesus. Amen.